I was doing some research for a sermon I'm doing today. If you want to look over at what ransom means, it's a little longer explanation of what's going on. But one of the things that really struck me is how confusing Christianity can be. Part of that confusion is because we come from three different traditions: the Hebrew tradition, the Greek tradition, and the Roman tradition. Jesus lived his entire life as a Hebrew person, and Judaism is the natural inheritors of the Hebrew tradition, but we've inherited quite a bit too. And Jesus was never, ever not Hebrew. So much of what he says only makes sense if you understand the Hebrew tradition. And for our purposes, you understand Judaism. So that's part of it. Then we get to Greek, because Greece was the main cultural influence of the time. And Paul did a lot of his teaching in Greek territory. So what he had to do was essentially take Hebrew cultures and put them into language that Greek folks understood, which meant Greek philosophy. So we've got a whole lot of people that have taken Jesus' teachings and plunked them into Greek thought without even realizing we're doing it. And we've inherited that tradition too. The problem is when you take something out of context, out of its culture, it doesn't quite make sense anymore. And then, if that's not confusing enough, then we have the Roman culture, which was the big, wide political culture of the day. The Romans and the Greeks and the Hebrews all interacted, and they didn't necessarily like each other, but they all interacted. So we've got a church structure that is Roman, because they were the political power. We've got Jesus being crucified by the Romans because he was a political prisoner, and that comes in. So these three cultures saw life very, very differently, and depending on which way you look, if you're going to look at the structure of the church, if you're going to look at the theology and the explanations of the church, or you're going to look at the practices of Jesus and what Scripture says, you're going to look at it either from a Roman perspective or a Greek perspective or a Hebrew perspective. And it takes a lot of knowledge to kind of be able to sort those things out. And oftentimes people go for the easiest answer, which fails to give the best answer. So often we don't ask the Jewish tradition how they see Jesus. It's not a conversation that we have a lot of, but there is increasingly people who are having that conversation. And we as Christians can learn a lot about our own faith by talking to Jewish folks who have kept a lot of the Hebrew tradition that Jesus would have followed. It's just a big melting pot. So you need to know, or you need to understand at least, it's going to take a lot of years of studying, but you at least understand that when we talk about the church and we look at the confusion, why we can't just have a statement and be that. It's because we, even in our beginning, started from three different places in three different cultures with three different focuses and three different sets of values. We got to parse that down to, are we following Jesus? If yes, we're following Jesus, then we have to highlight the Hebrew tradition. And that's not something that we've done a lot in the Christian church, mostly because up until this past 100 years, the church hasn't known that they should. So it's okay if church sounds like it contradicts each other, because it actually does. And that's okay. It's just a matter of learning more about it so you can figure out, okay, is this a Roman thing? Then I'll treat it like a Roman thing. If this is a Greek thing, then I'll recognize what the Greeks were thinking about. If this is a Hebrew thing, I've got the advantage of talking to my Jewish friends to better understand some of what's going on.